So this is basically what happens when you throw in a scroll with world building, because instead of building a built-in Planet Zoo, today I'm going to be drawing up the entire world that I have envisioned behind my Planet Zoo projects. So with that being said, hey everyone, my name is Poisonblade and I hope all of you are having a good day, and let's get started with drawing this world. So the map that you saw at the beginning of this video is basically, well, it was a trial map. It was the map that I built as soon as I got this program, which, for anyone wondering what program I'm using for this, I'm using Wonderdraft, which is kind of like the, I would say, cousin of Incarnate. However, Incarnate, personally to me, already has like a sort of fancy style built into it, while Wonderdraft is a little bit more open-ended in what style map you want to make. And Wonderdraft is like, well, Incarnate has a subscription model, so you pay for it around every period or something, and then with Wonderdraft you pay once and then you have the program for life. That's why I use Wonderdraft. But anyway, so as I said, the map that you saw in the beginning was the trial map, but you will see that like 80 or 90% of the end result of this somewhat more definitive map, because I will probably tweak it the further we get into this, because I plan to do more of this. But I will probably still tweak it, but it's definitely a little bit more definitive. And compared to the trial version, well, basically what I did was move the map a little bit more westward, because the western landmass that I had was basically just this tiny sliver, and there was like a lot of ocean on the east side, and I wanted to show a little bit more of the land instead of just ocean. But I did start with the island archipelago of Arcado. Arcado is basically for me the anchor point. As soon as I've placed Arcado, I know where the rest of the world is going to be. I don't know how any of this started. Like, I just started basically drawing up stuff with the trial version, and it was kind of like, oh, I really like how this looks. And then with this definitive version, it was also like, oh, how am I going to explain this? Because when I was drawing this map, what I was constantly keeping in mind was like plate tectonics, how to explain the climate. And when it comes to explaining the climate, I had to look into wind patterns. This was all built on stream, or all drawn on stream. And one thing that kept coming up was I was constantly just saying how proud my geography or high school geography teacher would be, because I remembered some stuff. Well, he didn't teach me about wind patterns, but maybe that makes him even prouder. And then I think he's then turning around again, because there's still fantasy elements, of course, to this map. But to basically give you a very quick tour of this map, Island Nation, or well, not Island Nation, former Island Nation, but the Island Archipelago, that's kind of double thing, but the archipelago to the northeast where I started is Arcado. Used to be an island nation, but now that kingdom has fallen. The biggest landmass to the central south is, well, I call it Umira. Don't ask me how I came up with that name, I really have no idea. Sometimes names just pop into my head. The landmass to the western or the southwest doesn't really have a name yet. And the landmass to the northwest mostly is Noskordos. Yeah, there are two names eventually that you are going to see with Noskordos and Arcado, which shouldn't really be here, because all of the names that you are going to see, which is the last thing I usually do, because it's, you know, you build up the world first and then you put in nations and the names and such, or at least that's my approach to building a world. Noskordos and Arcado are landmasses, but this map shows nations and kingdoms. So those two names are just there to make it easy to show you guys what's what. When I was building this world, as I said, I just wanted to make a world that's somewhat believable, that's not completely pure fantasy. So when it comes to like explaining the climate, the one biggest thing here was Arcado, or the archipelago, is supposed to have like a Mediterranean climate. But Noskordos is supposed to be this Scandinavian or northern climate, and usually you have kind of like a flow in between those, where you like go from a northern climate into a temperate and then eventually get to a Mediterranean climate. But here those two were literally next to each other. And so I had to think like, oh, the simplified version here is cold wind comes down from the north and warm wind goes up from the equator to the north or south, depending on what side of the globe you're on. And yes, this is north of the equator. We're not in Australia, although I think if you put this world on our globe, then the central south landmass, or Umira, is, if you place that on like where the Arabian Peninsula is, then Ozaru is basically where New Zealand is. Not as far away, I think, but yeah, New Zealand is basically Ozaru in this world. But how I explained like how Arcado has this Mediterranean climate, while right next door is a Scandinavian climate, is mountain ranges. A lot of mountain ranges I actually placed first because I wanted natural borders, because in Umira, the landmass is dominated by this one mountain range splitting the continent in half. And that was mostly because I wanted the border for the Azantine Empire, or Azantium, which I really thought I was clever with that name because it sounded slightly Arabian, but also had that Tium dragging it into like Byzantium. And then I quickly realized I basically took Byzantium, took away the By, and replaced it with A. And then, yeah, I mean, it works because it's supposed to draw in with the history of the land there. Yeah, that mountain range was basically just put there to form a natural border because it's easier to defend some mountain passes, or later on I will add rivers as well. Like, it's easier to defend rivers or mountain passes than it is to defend like a open field of grass. So you will usually find borders to go alongside rivers or mountains. But then when I wanted to explain like climates and such, it also really worked well to have like mountain ranges in certain areas. Because when it comes to Arcado, as I said, cold wind comes down from the north. So I quickly realized, oh, I need to have like a mountain range to the north of Arcado, or to the north of the archipelago, to shield it from the cold wind coming down from the north. But I have to keep it open to the south so that the warm wind from basically Azantium, because Azantium is like 80% desert, well, is able to come up north. So basically I had to build a wall to keep the cold wind out, but have it open so that the warm wind can come in. So that's basically how Arcado was somewhat built. And in the trial version of this map, I wanted Arcado to be this archipelago, but I basically built one big island and a couple, or like a handful of smaller islands. So I don't know what Arcado has done to me, but I keep destroying it. Like, I keep splitting it up in more islands. And as I said, I will probably still tweak this map the further we get into it, because I wanted to do more with this. Like, I really have started to get into like world building as such. Surprisingly, I'm not really that much into D&D. I just like to build worlds. I like to just build maps, draw maps and such. Yeah, that was kind of surprising, that like how quickly I fell into the deep dark hole of making maps. And I also started something on World Anvil. World Anvil is like a site where you can type out all your in-world lore and such and information. Just because if I don't write things down, I keep changing things. So I needed to write it down. So by now, Azantium is like fully described, like society, governments, geography, all of that. Well, there's also just a complete timeline of Azantium and Arcado. Like, I've really gone off into the deep end. But anyway, going back into this map, as I said, the mountain range splitting the central southern landmass, or Umira, completely in half, first was established as a natural border, but it just keeps getting as a really good explanation for climate as well, because when you have a large mountain range, usually you have a wet side and a dry side. And you can really quickly see that here as well, because the lands to the west of what I have now called the Rosatoros Mountains. Yeah, that name was literally picked from, I think it's the last mission in the 6th Settler game. I really like that name and it fits with the place, because the lands to the west of that mountain range are supposed to be like inspired by, well, the northern part of that place is supposed to be like inspired by Spain and Italy. the further south you go, the more you go into like French territory or like French-inspired regions. Yeah, it really worked well because you have this like very lush green climate to the west of this land or to the west of this mountain range, and then this very dry region to the east of it. But it's still open enough so that warm winds can come down from or can come up from the south and reach Arcado. A lot of things were like, oh, I really like how this looks. Oh, and it also really easily explains the climate and such. And then it was like, oh, how do tectonic plates work? And you can somewhat see the tectonic plates at work here. I'm of course not going to draw those in because that's kind of a little bit too much, because this map is only supposed to show like the nations and such, which is why I will later add the names Nosgodos and Arcado, but that doesn't really work because those are the land masses, or well, Nosgodos is the landmass to the northwest, Arcado is the archipelago. But it's just, you know, to make things easier. Arcado is like so much like split up in different city-states that's impossible to have it as all separate names of every city. Yeah, I had to find a lot of names in the end, and well, on stream it literally was just like, what letter haven't I used? I was literally just going over my keyboard like, I've used the A, I've used the S, I've used the D, I've used the F, I basically went like that, and as soon as I found a letter that I hadn't used yet, I was like, alright, now I need to find a name with that. Because if I want nations to be connected, I use a similar like naming structure, such as Arcado and Azantium, they both start with an A, so there is history behind that. But then other nations, I don't want them to be connected, or I don't want them to sound similar, because if you have a lot of similar sounding names, then it's easily to get them confused for each other, or for them to become blur. Going to find a name with that letter, because I want the names to sound different as such. And if you've watched the last video of al-Bashar, you will see a lot of familiar names, such as Cantero, as well as Azantium, Hadrias, Nosgodos, and Arcado, and our unfortunate one, Tagues. Yeah, Tagues just, kind of like Arcado, just kept being beaten down. And I think it is because I can't correctly pronounce the name, or at least how I want to pronounce it is not how I actually pronounce it, like I want to pronounce it with a French accent. Yeah, Tagues just kept getting smaller and smaller and smaller, because if I can't pronounce the name, you're going to get demoted, basically, is what's happening here. When it comes to the names, like, I used a fancy name generator, and that's literally what I typed into the Google search bar. Fancy name generator is for me at least, the first site that popped up, and there's a lot of names there, and I basically looked for something that sounded like what I wanted, and then tweaked it so that I have something somewhat original. Although there is a nation called Forsten, or did I call it Forsten? Like, it's all become a little bit of a blur. It's the nation that I'm working on currently, which, yeah, some names, I mean, kind of like Rosotores, I take from places such as other games. I think Forsten, or Voltest it was. Yeah, it's a character in The Witcher. Just to show my Dutchness again, Voltest is supposed to be inspired by the Netherlands and, well, northwestern Germany, like the Rhine region it's supposed to be inspired by. And then we have Fairvont, and that's the odd one there, because Cantero and Hadrias are supposed to be like Italian and Spanish inspired, as I said. Everything south of that is supposed to be going into like more French inspired cultures. But then Fairvont, I, for some reason, saw as like Austrian, Balkan inspired, so Fairvont is really a weird one. And you will see here that I've used the rivers a lot to really show borders, but also not show borders. Because I think if I showed like the actual borders on this map, it would be so busy. Like, the map in itself is already busy enough, so I was like, yeah, I'm probably not supposed to draw borders here, because it's, you know, it's going to get too busy. And on the final place, Abessam, yeah, I'm watching it right now and I still can't really pronounce it correctly. But that is the place that I want to be inspired by Ethiopia, but also West Africa. So there's a lot of different cultures all spread around this world map. I didn't want Ozaru to be in here because again it would be too chaotic and I want to have some mystery. Like Ozaru is supposed to be part of this like mystery empire. So I wanted it to be off this map so that there is that mystery. Like I like just having things where there is mystery, where not everything is explained. And yeah, as I said, I will continuously tweak this map and I will do more of these videos. Because I want to like zoom into different places and go into detail, like especially with Azantium. Azantium right now is my favorite place. I mean, you guys know it from al-Bashar, which is its capital. But I really wanted to go in detail and, you know, do all the different cities, like the city of Colonia, Istar, Sarit, and all of that. Like I wanted to show the roads and such. Yeah, this is... like, I've really gone into the deep end with world building. It's still surprising to me that I'm not really that much into D&D. I just like building worlds and setting up stories, but not really going through the stories. And also, yeah, I'm probably going to just spend a lot of time here. And the end result of the speedbuild, or, well, it's not a speedbuild, it's basically just a time-lapse of me creating this world, but I already tweaked it. Like, there's already, like... I added a new ocean, or not an ocean, I added a new sea, and then I removed some things and added some things. I placed some names in different places because now you can barely read Arcado. Because, well, right now it's on the sea. I placed it on the easternmost big island, and then I later on, behind the scenes, placed it on the westernmost island. Also, don't know where this came from, but, well, I know that there is this sort of island chain or another archipelago to the east, and I knew, like, oh, this is probably a volcanic region, because how else to explain why those islands are there? But I haven't given that place a name, mostly because, I mean, the same with Conterno being basically plague. That archipelago was just volcanoes. Like, sometimes I just don't have any other explanation or any other detail besides plague or volcanoes. So, yeah, somebody asked, like, oh, are there pirates in here? They're probably on that archipelago because nobody really lives there. I mean, it's probably so volcanic. I actually, because I wanted to have the tectonic plates be like, basically where that archipelago is going into Arcado or off to the side of Arcado, that's basically where it like splits and you go onto another tectonic plate. So that's how I made sense of the volcanoes there. But yeah, I also gave Arcado a volcano because why not? Why not build another Pompeii? Don't look at the Mystific Ocean that's literally just like, oh, Pacific and then Mystic instead of Pacific. Yeah. I had a lot of fun with the names. Again, a lot of them were just name generator. Like, some, like the beginning ones, have a meaning behind them, but a lot of the names that I've come up with since are just name generator ones, where I've tweaked them a little bit so that they fit in with what I wanted. So, let's say 80% or 90% of the names don't have any meaning. But anyway, that's going to be it for today. I hope you enjoyed this video. Again, it's different than anything else I've done, but I really just like world building, so I am probably going to do more of these, just because I am a squirrel. You can't really stop me. But I'm now just going to show you guys the end result of the map with a little bit of tweaking. So here is the new world map, and there are some things that have changed. First of all, a lot of places or a lot of capitals got names, and we have a new sea, which I called the Osiril Sea. Kind of, I wanted to have something that had like a kind of elvish sound, even though there's probably no elves in this world. Although there are airships for some reason, so it's a strange world, but I love it because of that. So a lot of names were added for the capitals of all these places. Some like land masses were somewhat scraped by. I thought Azantium was a little bit too broad, so I scraped it off a little bit. And yeah, I really like how it turned out, and I will probably zoom in on Azantium next. Especially this is an extra thing, but there's this really southern part of Byzantium which is inspired by Egypt. I mean, you see the giant river there, and that's really the part where I'm like, I have no idea what to do there, but I'm really interested in what to do there because I already envision this like nomadic culture living there. But anyway, that's going to be it for today. As I said, hope you enjoyed the video. If you enjoyed it, there is the like and subscribe button if you want to see more, and there's a bell button that we will have a new Pompeii before that button works, but it's supposed to notify you whenever I'm upload a new video or whenever I go live, because I will probably do a lot more like drawing streams just because I really enjoy them right now. So again, with that being said, I hope you enjoyed the video and I wish all of you an amazing day. Bye bye!